In the worlds of gaming, there has always been the question, what if? What if we took certain situations, characters, and other things, throwing them together, creating a new scenario that is either similar to what the characters themselves have encountered or not at all, to see what would happen? Greetings, Reclaimers. I am the British Runner, and I have made this transmission to give you a cross-game what if that will answer the question of what would happen if Isaac Clarke from the Dead Space universe was to find himself within the world of Halo. For the viewers that are not familiar with the Dead Space games, let me give you a brief understanding of what Isaac has been through before we get into the story. In the Dead Space universe, there are monoliths that produce near unlimited electromagnetic energy. These are called the markers. The marker, upon activating, will produce an electromagnetic signal that will seek out intelligent life, in which the signal will attempt to gain entry to the mind, which will grant the affected person a set of symptoms like headaches, nausea, and nosebleeds that intensify as the exposure continues. The affected person will begin to have nightmares when they sleep, seeing what will be coming for them, which will develop into cases of insomnia. The signal will also have another property, one that gives the affected the ability to build new markers. This is how they reproduce. However, this ability will only be available to those with high intelligence levels. To everyone else, the symbols that they will see will act as noise in combination with the insomnia will make the person fall into a deep depression, making the person extremely paranoid and highly aggressive. This will soon make these people fall into a state of insanity and obsession. However, if the signal was to latch onto a dead body, it will radiate the cells, turning them into necrotized ones, which will shift the tissues, muscles, bones, and skin into a new form, which leads into a necromorph being created. The necromorphs possess no empathy, no emotions. They are a hollow shell of the vessel they possess. However, you may say that they sound a lot like the Flood, but these necromorphs, they cannot be killed in traditional ways. The only way to stop a necromorph is to slice and tear the limbs of these creatures off. In the interest of time, let's say that the necromorph outbreak has reached the final stage, that being known as convergence. The marker will then use its gravitational abilities to pull the various forms up along with anything nearby, or that the fleshy bacterial corruption plastering on the nearby environment has clung to in order to create a new necromorph form that has fused with the marker, a Brethren Moon, which comes with all of the abilities the prior necromorphs and marker had before, only now have they become heightened. Isaac has not only destroyed 2 markers ending the outbreaks on Aegis 7 and Titan Station, but has also survived and escaped 4 different necromorph outbreaks. However, let's move on to how Isaac would react to being forced into this new world, shall we? As Isaac places his hands on the codex and with the aid of his ally Carver, they both twist the device connected to the machine, allowing it to activate, which then destroys the moon before the final form can be finalized, creating a shockwave which then destroys the ground they stand on, before knocking them back, making them fall thousands of feet back down to the icy surface of Tau Volantis. As Isaac takes out his picture of his former lover Ellie, he would look at it, giving him comfort before the end, when the icy winds would snatch the picture away. Isaac would then close his eyes, allowing himself to drift past this world and into the cold embrace of his demise, when he would feel a great pain as he landed onto a surface that felt cool, not as cold as the icy snow plains Volantis had to offer. That's when he would open his eyes to see the icy environment. The white blanket of snow had gone, and everything looked warm He would get up thinking to himself that the fall wasn't as bad as he had thought it would have been. He would then shout out to Carver, expecting him to call back, when he would only hear an audible echo through the valley walls. He would ask himself of where he was to be, thinking that maybe the machine had terraformed the planet back to its original state before the Volantians had activated the machine for the first time, pausing convergence. But then he looked outward towards the horizon, seeing a long strip of what seemed like a mixture of terrain and metal forming at the edge of the world that would extend out, looping around to the other side. The world itself looked of alien origin, but similar to Earth, except with the notable color scheme. Isaac would move on, walking past the top of the hill that he had landed on, and down the slope, thinking that there must be a civilization here, and maybe that's where he will find Carver. However, throughout his travels, he would not find a soul in sight, which made Isaac feel uneasy, making him jump at the nearby wildlife, as if expecting necromorph forms to jump out of the bushes after him. Instead, he would pass through a man-made cave system, or at least what he thought was man-made, navigating through several trails before heading to the top of a cliff, unlatching his helmet, thinking to himself that, is there really no one here? No people? No necromorphs? That cannot be. And he could not locate Carver anywhere. Could it be that he was, in fact, dead? Suddenly, Isaac would snap out of his trance-like state when he heard a notable explosive noise, as if something had broken out of an atmosphere. He would see what looked like alien ships in space, followed by escape pods hailing down towards the location he had just come from. Isaac would latch his helmet back on and run back the way he came, thinking that perhaps whatever these people were to be, they could help him. However, he would have to be careful, as one wrong move could make them think he was of hostile origin. As he was nearing the area he originally started at, he would stop in his tracks, hearing something that sounded different to his own clanging footsteps that echoed through the metallic corridors. He couldn't see anything, so he reached for his plasma cutter, holding it out, illuminating the area with the flashlight attachment. However, as he did, he saw nothing, like the marker's influence was still present within him. That's when he thought about this place again. Where is this place if the marker's influence has not been affecting him? He hasn't been able to hear the whispers. So then, where is he? Even when he hasn't been near to a marker, he has still heard the whispers. He then thought he must truly be a very long way away from Tau Volantis, perhaps on the other side of the universe. Perhaps the alien device itself has another ability to transport the operator to another location after activation, like a safety mechanism for the user, which gave Isaac hope for Carver when he again snapped out of his trance of thought to hear the movement again. Looking all around, he could not see what was making the noise, but that did not mean that Isaac would give up, as he could hear the footsteps of whatever was coming towards him. But that's when he saw it. Like looking at a clear, transparent blob, he saw something obscuring his view, nearly invisible to the naked eye, but once he looked and noticed the cloak, he had his eyes transfixed upon it. Isaac would attempt to call out to it, with it shattering its cloak and walking towards him. The creature looked very tall, reaching over Isaac's height, and he was tall for a human. The creature looked to be 7 foot tall with armor plating that looked advanced compared to his own. However, the creature would kneel before him, as if he was to be worshipped. Perhaps it thought he was to be a god, or something like that. However, when he unlatched his helmet to talk to the creature more clearly, the creature would hear the mechanical noise looking up to meet his gaze, when it suddenly rose quicker than it had descended, punching Isaac straight in between the eyes, knocking him out cold. A few hours later, Isaac would awaken, seeing that his plasma cutter was now missing, and that he was in a room with an energy field imprisoning him within it, with the color scheme looking like a mixture of purples and pinks. He would shout out, demanding to see the person in charge, when he would hear a voice near to him, coming from the room adjacent to his own, that sounded human. Over the course of many hours, the two would talk to each other. The man in the other cell room could not believe what Isaac was telling him about his adventures with the horrific enemies known by Isaac as the Necromorphs, and of these accursed monoliths known as the Markers. But he would take his word for it, with it all seeming strange. But then again, the Great War would expand his level of understandings when combating the Covenant, so perhaps the tales Isaac spoke of began to resonate with him. That's when Isaac could feel a rumbling in the floor panels, as if this place had a catastrophic failure about to occur, or a fight had broken out. A Marine across the way from Isaac would shout, "Oh yeah, that'll be our boys coming in to rescue us, then we'll have 2 Spartans on our side." The man would ask, "What do you mean, soldier? 2 Spartans?" The soldier would say, "Well, there's the Master Chief and another right here beside your cell." Isaac would be about to dispute the claim when another explosion could be heard nearby, this time closer to their location, when the doors would slide open with a group of Marines barreling on through, firing down a hail of bullets upon the guards, along with a man that was heavily armored moving like he was not wearing anything at all. The armor appeared as a green shell covering a black suit with a green helmet at the top with a golden visor. The shields would disperse, and the original scene would play out from here, with the man Isaac talked to being Captain Keyes, who would explain who Isaac was to the Master Chief, then would ask Isaac, "How about it? You help us in our fight, and we'll help you get home?" Isaac would nod his head to comply, while looking short compared to John. Captain Keyes would ask Isaac for his Spartan code and rank, when Isaac would tell him that he hasn't the faintest idea of what he is talking about. He is not sure of what a Spartan in their ranks would even be, and that his occupation was an engineer. Keyes would reply while John would be staring at Isaac through his visor. "Well, then maybe you can engineer for a way out of this mess. Come on, Chief, you lead the way with Isaac. You know the way out better than any of us." Isaac would see his plasma cutter in the corner of the room and picks it up before departing, taking point with the Master Chief. Moving through the corridors, they would encounter large groups of Covenant reinforcements. John would take down the elites, while Isaac would take on the smaller Covenant forces like the Grunts and Jackals. That's when Isaac would see the 3 elites beating down on the Chief, overwhelming him if only for a moment, with one preparing to strike with an energy blade, when Isaac would use his stasis ability to slow the descent of the sword and use kinesis to pull it from the grip of the elite's hand, giving John the time he needed for his shields to recharge and to deliver the final blows to these Covenant forces. Isaac would regroup with Chief, asking if he was okay, with the Chief saying that he is fine, but giving him a nod as a sign of respect. Before they reach the docking platforms, the original timeline now takes over here, with the group getting into a dropship and the captain piloting their forces back to Alpha Base, where John and Isaac would be separated before the Chief takes a battalion of Marines to the silent cartographer. An elite would shortly be captured, and the location of a secret weapons cache would then be given to them. However, Isaac would hear something that sounded like the elite laughing before a Marine made the alien shut its trap. Odd, he thought, but then again, no, it's nothing. Nothing to worry about. Keyes would tell Isaac that they will be going to this part of the installation to find the weapons cache, as if the Covenant were to claim it, the results could be devastating. Isaac would say, "Alright, when do we leave?" Johnson would add that they will be leaving in a couple of hours, however he will be staying to guard the post, which was shocking to Isaac that he will not be joining them, especially after what they had just encountered together. But, again, this did not feel right. He would demand to be a part of the mission, or to at least go in Key's place, when Keys would hear the startled voice creaking from his throat. Keys, after some thought, would agree, thinking that they will be taking a small group of Marines, and to have Isaac being on point would indeed help them greatly, like having another Spartan that's not a Spartan, fitted with his own strange abilities and weaponry. The teams would shortly be assembled, and they would soon fly out to the remote location of the ring to assess the surroundings and to further investigate. But little did Isaac know that he would be stepping into a familiar scenario to the one he left in his universe, but one that could be seen to be far more disturbing and deadly. As the two pelicans are about to take off and Isaac was to step onto the pelican, Johnson would stop him for a moment and tells him that he does not trust him all too well, and that if he shows any signs of turning on them or bringing harm to Captain Keyes, he will not hesitate to shoot him on sight. Isaac would look to him and tells him that he knows why he is there, and asks, does he? And so the two pelicans lift off, flying towards the remote location of the swamps of Installation 04, where they will see a less familiar sight to the one that they were accustomed to in the past battlefields, in which they would meet the one enemy the Covenant showed great fear in unleashing. The scene would play out normally from here in the original turn of events. Johnson's team would find the maw of the facility, with it being deserted and left open like a gaping wound, with some of the Covenant's equipment being left behind to issue out to the Marines of their distant presence. As Isaac steps out of the Pelican and into the flooded and foggy environment, he would find that this area felt cold, but not specifically the temperature, but of the mood. It was quiet, almost too quiet, giving him that familiar sensation he had all those years ago when entering the USG Ishimura. He would ask if this was to be normal for the Covenant's battle strategies, when Keyes would tell him that the Covenant have been known to use all kinds of different strategies in order to win battles and firefights. Ambush wasn't much of a question. He would then order his men to keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary, or at least what they perceived to be ordinary. The men moved slowly through the wet and damp forests, trying not to make any sudden noises to give their position away, with only the plant life to illuminate the surroundings through the dark environment, and their own flashlights to guide their path. They would soon come up to the same moor Johnson and his team had entered a little while ago, seeing the lights at the top, along with another Marine who would inform them of the team's descent. As they go down the lift shaft, the coldness of the metallic environment would resonate with Isaac, making him think back to his time on board the Ishimura. The rest of the sequence from here would play out normally once again, with Isaac giving out some pieces of dialogue now and again, stating that the facility doesn't give him the warmest of welcomes, that he has a bad feeling about this, and this all seems very familiar to what he has gone through before. With Johnson joking about meeting those scary necromorphs Isaac briefly spoke about prior, with Isaac saying that if he had seen them, then he would not be quick to joke about the likelihood of meeting them. The team would move down to a locked door, and as they open it, they all pour in, looking out for an ambush from the Covenant. Isaac would stand close to the captain just in case, when they would hear the squiddish noises pitter-pattering nearby, squirming around with their insectal-like noises. Then the radio starts to activate with static, with the Marine outside scrambling in, calling them, trying to warn them of an oncoming threat, when all they hear through the static of the radio is, "They aren't Covenant, when Johnson could not get a hold of the corporal and about to order Isaac to head back topside to find out what has happened. They then hear that noise again, but this time it would be accompanied by some loud banging, then clanging. They then saw a door shatter and burst open with many small creatures that were the size of a human head with tendrils moving and twitching in the air as if trying to get a sense of their position. They all moved as individuals but worked together, latching onto the closest Marines, then moved up to Johnson, who ordered Isaac to protect the captain. Isaac would use his plasma cutter, issuing out hot plasma through the infection forms, burning and slicing straight through them, trying to protect the captain as best as he could. As the Marines begin to fall to the parasitic forms, when they begin to twist to their will with the reconstruction of their bodies, muscles rearranging, slithering through the arms and legs like a set of internal tentacles that bursted out of the ends. The torsos began to bulge and contort, with the skin stretching, turning into a tumor as their bodies merged with the parasite, which then forced out the person's head, moving it backwards, causing them to scream and cry out in agony until the neck finally snapped and it dangled down the back of the once person. Isaac would then turn to the captain, grabbing him by the arm, pulling him out of the room as if he was to retreat, still firing the cutter. He could see Johnson running out to them, seeing the parasitic horrors coming in towards them. Isaac would stasis them, locking them in place, giving Johnson more time to lock the room down. And as he did, they could still hear the cries and screams of the Marines as the parasite continued the transformation process, prodding their minds for useful information. As the door gave out the notable beeping, telling them that it had been sealed. Hearing the banging and dampened screams on the other side, they decided to move up, using hand signals to communicate. Isaac would take the lead, and as he turned the corner, he would come face to face with a fully transformed Flood combat form, with the flesh of the combined entities being molded into one, with a set of greens and reds coating the creature, with the muscles twisting with the skin to create powerful claws, and the tendrils still present in the air, twitching as if like a snake, tasting for his presence. Isaac would then attempt to lift up the plasma cutter when the Flood form lifted its arm up, pointing a shotgun with its tremendous strength, blasting Isaac backwards. Johnson would then jump out, blasting the creature with all of his rounds, but that still wasn't enough to take down the abomination, and that's when it saw Keys with his pistol, where he blasts it with the full magazine, putting it down for good. Johnson would see Isaac rushing to his aid, however Isaac would lift himself up. Remarkably, the shotgun did little harm except for some bruising under his synthetic armor and the plating over that. But before Johnson could say anything, that familiar beeping could be heard, with the screams becoming more audible now as the door opens, letting the horde free, allowing them to pursue them. Isaac would then stasis the bottom of the corridor, allowing Johnson and Keys to escape. The three would make it through the hall, over the light bridge and back to the platform, and just before they activated the hologram controls, they then heard the creatures flooding through the nearby area towards them, and so they were off. The platform lifted up and Johnson would make the call for extraction. However, with the facility being located in such a dense part of the forest and swamps, they would be redirected to a nearby clearing. And so, when the platform came back up, Johnson would mark it, and as they reached the top, they all pointed their weapons out, seeing nothing. No Covenant, no Flood. Everything just as they had left it, with some noticeable blood splatters, but nothing out of the ordinary. Hearing the wildlife outside and seeing the world as they had left it made for a very surreal and uneasy feeling. Making their way through the forests and swamps, they would soon come to that clearing with a pool of water. seeing more lights in the fog at the center, as if it had come to swallow the environment up like an agent of the flood. And as Johnson had called in their position, they then saw several silhouettes coming through the woodwork, all with those disturbing looks to them, with tendrils sticking out of the sides, hearing the groans, mumbles, and regurgitated choking sounds echoing towards them through the distance, walking slowly, as if preying on their morality, and trying to bring them down with their presence alone. When they would get the call telling them of the extraction coming in the next 5 minutes, Johnson would begin firing all cylinders at them, which forced Isaac's hand. Over the course of the battle, the flood forms would launch themselves at them, but with Isaac's help, the three would repel the flood, but not entirely. Isaac would then begin to hear a humming sound coming from above, along with several technologically advanced machines floating down from above, as if like angels descending down from the heavens to give humanity their aid against a deadly opponent in this hell. Isaac would shrug the humming off, showing Johnson that they are not attacking them, that they should work with them to defeat these creatures. Johnson would claim that these machines are his doing, but Isaac would claim otherwise before hearing the humming again, but this time like a voice. Could it be the marker's influence had finally found him again? Maybe they hadn't stopped the moons. Perhaps they were behind these creatures. Maybe in destroying the moon, Isaac had somehow devolved the necromorphs into these twisted monsters. After a moment of pondering while fighting, he suddenly felt a weird sensation, as if he was being moved. When he would see that he had been lifted to view the battle from afar, Isaac would then turn around to see another floating machine, but this one seemed to be of great importance, like a commander of these sentinels. 343 Guilty Spark would then introduce himself, giving Isaac a similar speech that he would have given to John 117. However, he would insist on Isaac releasing the flood, and would say as he teleports the pair away that he will aid in the containment of the installation, that there is much to do. Well, that was quite the challenge to write this, but nonetheless, I had a blast writing this story out, as, to tell you the truth, I did have a different turn of events in this what if, but I had accidentally deleted it. But I think that this story is what would have actually have happened if Isaac was to be in Halo Combat Evolved, and being a superior version of the previous script, I would like to give a special thank you to Reclaimer Gaming for allowing me to share this video with all of you for this collaboration, as like I said, I did have a lot of fun with creating this video, and if you enjoyed this what if scenario and the overall style of the video, then please feel free to look in the description below for my channel, where you can check out Reclaimer's submission for this collaboration with his what if the Master Chief were to have found the USG Ishimura from the Dead Space universe, along with seeing the lore and story videos I make on a weekly basis. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, then hit the like button. Comment your thoughts below and I'm sure Reclaimer will look forward to seeing them. If you are new to the channel, then be sure to subscribe to Reclaimer Gaming, as he has a lot of great content on the channel, and leave the video having a good one.